1, 2, 3. Oh, 1, 2, 3. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far, and welcome to today's video, which is going to be all about the new Haus Labs concealer. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay guys, so if you're not new here, you will know that the Haus Labs foundation was one of my all-time favorites. I have it on today. I absolutely love it. It's one of the products that got me super excited about this brand. So when I heard that they were coming out with a matching concealer, they had my attention. So let's take a look at it. This is the Triclone Skin Tech Hydrating and Depuffing Concealer from Haus Labs. It will set you back £27 or $32 for 7 mils, which is an average, not especially generous fill size for a concealer. It is described by the brand as being a clean, lightweight, long-wearing, non-comedogenic concealer that does more than cover. It visibly blurs, brightens, conceals with a medium buildable coverage that depuffs your eyes after 2 weeks of use. It features 20 plus skincare ingredients and is available in 31 shades across 6 shade families and 4 undertones. It also claims to be hydrating and brightening and is fragrance-free, clean, cruelty-free and vegan. So I won't lie to you, I've messed up my shade selection, okay? I'm just going to hold my hands up and say mistakes were made. And it's my own fault because there was actually a shade reference guide and I do know my foundation shades in this brand, so it should have been easy, shouldn't it? But here's the tricky thing. I found that while it's amazing to have so many shades and undertones to choose from, it always makes it actually harder because, you know, you're spoilt for choice. You don't know where to start. And there are a lot of big gaps here number wise. Like it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4. It goes, well, it does actually, but it doesn't continue that way. It goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 20. You see what I'm saying? There are some big gaps there, and there seems to be a big gap like right where I would have wanted my shade to be, which is fine, and I think actually really positive because it probably indicates that more shades will come, and this is just the initial launch, which for an initial launch is a fantastic range, but I do think those number gaps are there because more shades will come at some point. So another reason why I got my shade wrong is because I'm kind of in between shades at the moment. So my winter shade for the Haus Labs foundation is 260, and that is what I base my choice off of. So concealer to match shade 260 is said to be 24, and concealer to brighten is shade 12. And I went with 11 because shade 12 was a rosy undertone, and I don't like that. I want a neutral concealer, so I went one up to 11 because the next neutral shade up from 12 was shade 21, which seemed really close to the one that said it matched. And so I went in the wrong direction. Okay, I have now ordered shade 21, so that's the shade I would recommend you trying, and not 11 if you're around my skin tone. So I'm currently mixing shade 260 and shade 330, and 330 recommends you use shade 32 or 31 to match and shade 23 to brighten. So on reflection, 21 would have been a better choice, but we live and we learn. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to swatch this shade next to all of the other lightest concealers that I own, so that may help you avoid the mistake that I made and show you what this shade looks like in comparison to my other most popular concealers. So first up we have the Haus Labs shade 11 Neutral. As you can see, very, very light, lighter even than the underside of my arm. We then have the new Gucci concealer in the shade 25N, which is more like what I was going for. As you can see, a little, well, quite a bit deeper. Then we have Huda Beauty Coconut Flakes. Not far off, and this is an absolute stark winter shade for me, 2.7N. Next we have the Pat McGrath in the shade 9, again one that I wear in the starkest of winter and considerably deeper than the Haus Labs. This is an olive shade as opposed to the rest, which are neutral. We then have Dior's 2N Tom Ford 2W1, so this is the only warm tone shade. And finally Natasha Denona, and this is N8. Again, quite a bit deeper. Okay, so we have the new Haus Labs in the shade 11N. We have the Gucci in 25N, Huda Beauty Coconut Flakes, Pat McGrath shade 9, Dior shade 2N, Tom Ford shade 2W1 Taupe, and the Natasha Denona in the shade 8N. So all apart from the Pat McGrath and the Tom Ford are neutral shades, and you can see this is the lightest of the bunch. The closest is the Huda Beauty Coconut Flakes. So hopefully that's going to help you be a little more successful first time than I was choosing your shade. I will say that looking at the conversion chart, it seems to be quite accurate if you listen to it. So let me be your example of what not to do. So I've used this concealer a couple of times already. Let's dive into the application so you can see how it looks under the eyes and how it goes on and all of that good stuff. Okay, so I've used the Haus Labs foundation today. I used the shade 260 and 330 mix, just to be annoying because I'm in between like my kind of summer and winter shades. So yeah, I'm annoying. I can only apologize. I'm mixing my shades. Very annoying, I know. I can't really detect much scent or fragrance here. I think it literally just has a very mild sort of natural scent to it. There's no like discernible fragrance or smell at all. The wand is interesting because it's quite sturdy, it's quite firm, it's not super flexible, it's fairly like stiff, not like painful or like rough. It's soft and gentle, but it's firm, you know? It's a firm pair of hands. And I noticed straight away that this texture of this concealer is quite different. The one it reminds me of the most is the Tom Ford Shade and Illuminate concealer. It feels quite thick and creamy, but it feels thick and heavy like that one did. And you can see how light this shade is. That was definitely an error. I blame myself, okay? We're all human, and clearly we all make mistakes. Oh my gosh, that was a rather aggressive little gloop there, wasn't it? So I'm going to use my BK Beauty Hot and Flashy collab brush there. And I will say it blends in super duper easily, and I don't know that I was expecting it to, because it feels like such a sort of thicker, heavier formula. I thought I was going to be like putting in, you know, a shift. And it doesn't feel like it sort of blends like there's nothing there, but it does, you know, there's no work being done here. There's definitely a really easy blending, melting into the skin. It does look a little harsh because it's definitely, you know, lighter than I would typically choose, but I feel like it melts into the skin really nicely and it doesn't look as stark as you might have expected, given that I went so accidentally light with the shade that I chose. I will say that this would be a really good shade if you are like my winter shade match. It's a nice neutral shade, and if I was just using 260 with the Haus Labs, I think this would be a brightening shade for sure, but I think it would work nicely. Right now, I could definitely do with a good couple of shades up. Okay, so there she is all blended in. I will say again, I thought when the first time I used this concealer that it was going to be a mistake that I kind of apply. I fully thought, just because it feels so stiff, I guess is the word, that it wasn't going to budge. It was like it had already set down or something, but it's not the case. You've got time. It's not sort of like attaching to your skin and it won't budge. You've got time to blend it out. It blends out really, really nicely. No problems at all. I'm just going to go over with a sponge to get any sort of excess product. That's going to give us our best chance to not crease. If you make sure all the excess product is picked up. So I'm going to show you a nice close-up before we set, just so you can see the finish of this concealer. It's been on like a minute or so, so it's kind of like drying down now, and it's exactly, I think, as described. It's kind of a natural luminous matte. It's not radiant at all, but it doesn't look heavy, dry, or like unnaturally flat. It looks like a nice, I've just put an eye cream there. Now at this stage, you can just about see a little bit of darkness peeking through. The first time I used this, I used a sponge to blend it in, and you definitely get a little more coverage if you use a brush. So if you are really wanting to cover, that noise, if you are really wanting to cover everything, I would advise a brush. And I'm just going to see if I can build this in that area where I have that discoloration, to see if we can completely cover it. And also see how it builds, because it does claim to be buildable. I mean, I think that's as much coverage really as I've got from any concealer without powdering, which kind of adds a little bit of extra coverage and kind of concealing of these areas. I think this is about as much as I can get out of a concealer, to be honest, without using a colour corrector as well. So at this stage, without setting, if I stretch my face, you can see a little bit of creasing going on. That's why we're going in with powder. I'm using my Pat McGrath, and this is the Sonia G Worker L from her latest collection. And I'm going to push a small amount of this into the under eye area and eliminate those naughty creases. Just applying that everywhere I've applied. Just applying that everywhere I've applied concealer to set it and take away any shine. And now it's set down with that Pat McGrath powder. You can see the creasing has been all set away, and now I'm looking a little more matte, but I do have a little more sort of coverage to that under eye area. And this is about as good as my under eye area gets as far as coverage. I think this is about as full coverage of a concealer that I have experienced on those under eyes without using a colour corrector as well. There's barely anything showing through. The slightest hint of discoloration that is kind of intensified by like the lights. I don't think you'd really see that in person. I think this is super duper full coverage in my book. So again, I'm giving you a good old close up on the eyeballs, and I'm going to stretch my face. Hopefully you can see the improvement with that creasing. That's now set down. I do think, I will just point out that compared to like nothing under my eyes, these fine lines under here are going to look worse if you put a concealer and a powder there than if you put nothing there. So I think these lines look more obvious now than they did before I started doing my makeup, because there's now all these layers on those lines, so it's going to exaggerate them. That's what makeup is going to do, and that's just normal, and that's normal especially as we age. Nothing to worry about. You know, you could go makeup free and they would probably not look, you wouldn't notice them as much. But we're not doing that today. We're wearing makeup, and therefore you're going to see fine lines. But that's kind of the nature of makeup, especially in like this area. So at this point, it doesn't feel weightless to me. It definitely feels like I have concealer there, but it also doesn't feel heavy and horrible. It just feels like I have concealer on, and it's not super light and weightless. I think it's got a weight to it. It's there. I can feel it. But I don't think my under eyes feel like dry or tight or anything like that. It's fairly comfortable, but it isn't just completely weightless, and it doesn't feel like super hydrated either. It just feels like fine. I think the coverage is amazing. The texture is a little odd to me, like not odd, just different, okay? It's okay to be different. It feels different to a lot of my concealers. The only one that I've kind of used like this liquid concealer that has anywhere like the sort of thickness to it is the Tom Ford Shade Illuminate. Like I said, if you've tried that one, this is very similar in texture to that one. And that one is also a very good concealer. It's just, it takes a little bit of getting used to when you first apply it. It doesn't feel like a liquid. It feels like much more of a cream when you're applying it. So you've been warned, don't panic, it's fine. I think it feels like there's going to be an issue. It feels very thick. It feels like it's going to be hard to blend out. It feels stiff, but then it blends out beautifully and it looks beautiful on the skin. I love the finish. The shade, while being too light, is a nice neutral shade. The doe foot, I find, because it is more like stiff and it's not sort of flapping about wherever you put it, it's very easy to control and be really precise with. So I really like that you can really carve out, as you can see, your eyeshadow, really get, you know, very precisely down the center of your nose. Cupid's bow, you can be really precise. It's very easy to use between your brows because you have complete control over it. And I really like this packaging as well. I feel like it's very chic, very understated and very pretty. Okay, so let me quickly finish off the rest of my makeup. I'm going to take like half an hour to do that, and we'll do a first sort of let everything get to work check-in, and we'll go from there. Okay, so it's been about an hour since I applied this concealer now. I've finished my makeup, I've filmed all the other bits of my videos that I needed to do, all my swatches, all of that stuff. So let's take a close up now at this concealer now that it has dried down and had a chance to sort of settle into the skin. There's definitely a little bit of creasing happening if I stretch my face. You can probably see a teensy little bit there where it's kind of exaggerating my lines a little, kind of making them a little deeper because it's sitting in there a little. Very, very minimal, not bad at all. Most concealers do it, but I will say from wearing this a couple of days now that it doesn't get any worse. Some concealers like this start off here and it's like downhill from there. It gets worse and worse. It creases throughout the day. It starts like wearing away. That doesn't happen. This is like how it stays for the rest of the day. It's like it sets down, or you set it down and it's there, and this is how it stays. And I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks really nice and it's super flawless. It's definitely got some of the most coverage that I've seen from my concealers, which is interesting because it's described as being medium buildable, but I said the same thing about the foundation, okay? The foundation was, I think, described as medium buildable, but that is, I mean, this is a full glam, full coverage to me. So I think the medium buildable means it's medium buildable to full pretty quickly. Okay, so I think it's very flawless. I think it really covers beautifully, but I think like the caveat of that is that you are sort of sacrificing a little bit of kindness to the lines. I think it's slightly exaggerating my fine lines, which all concealers do, but I think it's slightly doing it a hair more than like my Huda Beauty or my Pat McGrath. It's definitely doing it more than the new Gucci concealer. I reviewed this recently and this was so kind and so flattering on lines, but it's got significantly more coverage, the Haus Labs does. The Gucci is really like a medium coverage concealer and that's all it does. You'll see a lot more darkness peeking through. So really, this is going to come down to what your priority is and what your under eye situation is. If you don't have a lot to cover, I would 100% go with the Gucci. It's got less coverage, but you have less to cover. And I think it's a little more flattering on lines and wrinkles. It's a completely different beast to the Dior. I had a lot of people asking me about this one. It has more coverage than the Dior Forever, but it's not got the same finish at all. This one feels and looks hydrating under the eyes. It feels very light and fresh, and it also is quite radiant and sort of luminous under the eyes, whereas the Haus Labs is more of a sort of soft matte, and once it's set, it's pretty much a soft matte finish under there, whereas this one definitely has some luminosity showing through even when set. It doesn't have as much coverage, but it is more hydrating. I'd say it's a little lighter and it just is a different finish altogether. So comparing it to the two big guns who've been in my life a very, very long time, the Pat McGrath and the Huda Beauty, these are like my two favourite fuller coverage concealers, both a sort of soft matte finish. I think this has a very comparable finish to the Huda and the Pat McGrath. Differences between packaging, differences between the doe foot and things like that, and the texture. These two are quite similar. This one is much thicker and stiffer of a formula. I think this one has more coverage than either of these. It's really, like I said, the fullest coverage concealer I can remember using. Definitely more coverage. I think these are they are thinner, and like I said, they don't offer as much coverage. I think they are slightly more forgiving, maybe, on the lines. I feel like I'm making this sound like it looks terrible and it's really, really badly exaggerating my lines. It's not at all. It's just I'm comparing this to like my holy grails, okay? My holy, holy grails. So I think those are slightly less exaggerating on my lines, and I think the slight amount of creasing that I've experienced with this, the teensiest bit, it doesn't happen with these two. So those are all of the comparisons that I think may be helpful if you have some of these other concealers and you love them and you've been using them. This one is going to give you more coverage than any of these others that I've mentioned by some way. But I do think that the sacrifice for achieving the extra coverage and that heavier formula is that it's probably going to slightly come at the cost of your lines not looking as perfect. So I'm going to go about the rest of my day now, and I will see you in a few hours so we can see how this little concealer is wearing under the eyeballs. See you in a few. Okay, I'm back. Can you believe it? It's as if I've never been gone, isn't it? But by the magic of media, I have in fact been gone. I've been gone this entire day, okay? I've just got back from the school run. It's 4 o'clock here. So this is 6 hours later for this concealer, and let's have a little snooker pick at what it's been doing, what it's been up to. So as has been my typical experience using this concealer now for, I think this is the third time I've tried it. Really no change from the 1 hour mark until I came to take my makeup off at the end of each day. I feel like this is, as I said, a very like full coverage, a solid full coverage concealer that has quite a stiffer, thicker texture than an average concealer. It wears beautifully. There's a slight bit, teensy bit of creasing on me and a slight hint, teensy bit of exaggerating of fine lines because it is a full Cle De Peau concealer. However, I really like it. I like it very much. It covers my darkness, my under eyes, better than any other concealer I have tried because it does have that extra bit of Cle De Peau when it comes to the level of coverage. I like the component, I like the doe foot, I like how it wears. It feels comfortable to me. I can feel that I'm wearing concealer, like I said, but it doesn't feel heavy. I don't want to get it off my face at the end of the day. So it has a lot of positives. I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying how flawless and like full beat and covered my under eye area looks. And I don't mind the slight bit of exaggeration of my fine lines because all concealers do that to a degree. And there's maybe like a literal splitting hairs between this and like my Huda Beauty and my Pat McGrath, and this does definitely have more coverage than those. So I'm definitely going to keep trying this over the next few weeks. I will, as always, update you in my September roundup as to how I'm getting on, anything that has changed, any developments, and a bit more about where this sits in comparison to my Pat McGrath, my Huda, once I've used it for a little bit longer, because those have been in my life for years. So I need a bit longer with this one. And I also need to go back and forth between those before I can make my final decision as to whether this is a new Holy Grail or whether it's in second or third place. But it's up there. It's in with a shot. It's top 5 already. I'll tell you that for free right now. Full coverage, creamy, rich, easy to blend, soft natural matte finish, long wearing. Those are the footnotes. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.